Oh man. All right. Well, oh, up to 18 on the stream. Okay, I think that's either the majority or everybody here. So we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you all for coming to Warcraft Logs Bootcamp. This is intended to be kind of a more or less an intro to intermediate. I plan on doing more advanced ones at a later date, but I at least want to get people up to snuff and up to speed with logging and what that means and what you can do and how to improve and what to look for and how to stop taking so much damage because everybody takes way too much damage.
Especially gnomes.
So, with that being said, we need to start off with making the logs. There's an add-on that will automatically do it for you. It's called Combat Logger, and that's all it does. I don't like one-off add-ons, so I instead use Exorcist Raid Tools. And it just does it automatically without me having to even think about it, and it does it every single time. It's a great add-on. A lot of raid teams require it for other reasons, but I like it for this one especially. So to make sure that you actually do the logs correctly, we're going to open up Exorcist Raid Tools with /RT. Over here at Saving Log, make sure this button up top is checked to enable recording anytime you're in the zone, and you can set it to what you want: scenarios, dungeons, Mythic Raid, Heroic Raid, Normal Raids, and Raid Finder. I never log Raid Finder because why would you even go into Raid Finder? Please don't. It's painful. Once you do that, anytime you go into the raid, it's going to start making a combat log. And that is just a horrible looking text file. And it's terrifying if you try to read it. But any action that is made, whether it's by you, or the boss, or trash, or your teammates, or anybody, anywhere, anything in the instance, it gets recorded. And that's what's so nice about the logs is we can see everything from everybody. It is recorded on your computer itself. So if you happen to disconnect for any reason, you're going to lose that part of the log while you're out of the game. So once you have that all situated, go make a log. Go do a dungeon. Go run a raid or whatnot, and you're ready to upload. One important thing is to keep in mind, it strictly records your actions that you make. If you're running a mechanic or doing something that has to do more with your strat, that's not necessarily going to show up in the log unless you know you're looking for it. Normally when people are looking at parses, and we'll talk about them later, and say, why am I so low compared to these other people? A lot of times it has to do with you're doing a mechanic, these other people are not. And that's something you can't tell from a log unless you know you're looking at it. But like I said, we'll get into parses and whatnot later. Next up, that's all you need to do in game. Now you need to go to Warcraft Logs. Create an account. It's perfectly free, not a problem at all. And you're going to need to get the client. It's right here, install client. He recently came out with, and I say he, Kira, the owner, proprietor, creator, and all that of Warcraft Logs and several other logging things for other MMOs. But we just care about Warcraft Logs. He created a new-ish version of the uploader to be supported in the future. It is still in beta, but I've been using it for a bit now and have not had a single issue. It's this one that's over on the right. It's called the Electron uploader. It's made in Electron language platform type of deal. The older traditional one is the Adobe Air version, which is on the left. That's not going to be supported terribly much further, just because Adobe Air is pretty much in maintenance mode from Adobe. So Kira is switching over to the Electron. That's why he's getting that up and running. You can just click either link, depending on what operating system you're using, and download, and it automatically installs, save it to the proper directory. It's just like everything else. And it pops up this. You'll be asked to log in to your Warcraft Logs account, and then you're brought to this screen. There's two ways to upload a log. That is upload a log. That is a single shot. you have the log saved on your file on your computer, and you're just going to upload all of it all at once. That's fine if you had logged in the past and you need to upload as after the fact. But if you're raiding, live logging is the way to go. This uploads each fight as you finish. So to do that, you just click live log, and then you'll need to find your directory for logs. This is the default, and you just need to find that directory wherever you have it saved. Your installation directory /retail/logs. And if you have joined the guild with your Warcraft Logs account, which I highly recommend you do, you'll be able to choose what team you're uploading for or what guild you're uploading for. So you can see Eternal Kingdom, and because I was at the Saturday morning fun run is checked here. Normally I use Immortal, but all the raid teams are here, and if it's not a raid team, it's a fun run or a random event.
And we usually ask that only one person uploads for one event, so otherwise I have to go in and clear it out because it makes the calendar really messy.
Yes. So just get with your team leads to see who they want recording for the team, and hopefully you'll have at least one log. You can always upload to your own personal logs, and they're just for you. They are public unless you tell them not to be, but you can just put them for yours so they're not tethered to EK. So there's that. Hit OK, and you can give it a title here. I believe for EK the nomenclature is team name and then something else, a description if you want, but the team name needs to be first. That way we can organize the logs here. So when you're live logging, it'll upload, it'll give you a link, you can go straight to the log file, and it'll upload every fight as you finish, and it's really handy to check during progression to see, oh, this last pull, who took how much damage from what, and all that stuff, which again, we will get over, or go over here in just a bit. Once you have the log uploaded, I tend to go to EK's calendar because that's the easiest for me to find, and you can see there's a lot of logs here. A handy little filtering feature, you can pick just your team from the drop down up top, so like Immortal, so you can see all of our Gahoon wipes. I'm still depressed. Hang on, I need something more uplifting here. There we go. Here's the fun runs that we did between yesterday and today. So, and you can just click on any one of these, and this is a log file here. And let's go to mother because random. You see everybody's who was there, how much damage they did, how much healing they did, how much damage did they take, etc., etc. This is a summary page. It's very helpful, very handy. So before I delve too much further, does anybody have any questions on getting the log uploaded, getting your account there, and what you see and what you get and all that fun stuff?
The only question I have is about how to add the guild. Do you just type it in when you're live logging, or what?
You have to get the link from someone, so you would need to get it from, like, I have the link. But again, like, we only want one person logging for each team at a time, or like each fun run to the guild. Otherwise, like, it's a mess and we have to go in and clear everything out. So
okay, gotcha. Thanks.
Yeah. But you can always log privately, and then let's say someone leaves halfway through, then you can upload yours, like after the fact, like Jazzy was referring to.
Gotcha.
Or if or if you're, and this has never happened to me today, if you forget to log on the very first fight because you forgot to turn them on and start live logging, you can upload a full log after the fact. So, so this is a log, and there's way more information here than meets the eye. But we can go over some of the easier things that most people immediately go to, and they go to this tab. Damage, done. And they want to see how they did. Oh, look at all those pretty bars and how much damage did they do. Of course, Laney's at the top. Why wouldn't she be? So you can see kind of a damage breakdown on Mother when the most damage was going out, thanks to that lovely graph over time. When was the least amount of damage happening, which looks to be about a minute 15 going in, which was probably around transition.
That was Hero. Wasn't it?
That's before Hero. Hero gets highlighted in this lovely blue shaded area. That was Hero.
Sorry, there's a lag.
Yes, there is. As I'm trying to go a little slow. But more importantly, for your own play, you can always look at just you and see your damage breakdown. What was your hardest hitting ability? How many casts did you do? How many times did it crit? How much damage did it do? And all this fun stuff. And this is all just for damage. This is my Warlock, by the way. And I didn't do particularly well on that fight, but that's okay. It was normal. We still killed her.
No, that was heroic.
Oh, heroic. We still killed her. So,
Barely.
you shush you. So, that's damage done. There's a lot more that we could dive into as far as casts and casting while buffs go out, but we'll cover that at either a much later date or at the end of this if we have time. Another very helpful one, and this is more for tanks, but it's also for everybody. Damage taken. Who took the most damage? Shocker, Luke, that scrub. He constantly takes so much damage. Probably because he's a tank, but I just see that's an excuse. You can see everybody else here took roughly the same amount of damage until you get to these people who... I don't know how Laney took so little damage. Oh, probably because she went through the room and didn't die.
Yeah.
So you can see damage taken specifically for tanks. We can see Mother is almost all melee. In fact, it's all melee. And then the Cleansing Purge hit Luke for 1.23 million, and he couldn't survive because he's a scrub like that. In case you don't know, Luke is my co-tank, so I throw him shade every now and then, just because. It's out of love. And then the defense grid did a little bit of damage. Again, you can see how many times you got hit, how many times it was cast, average hit, how much it missed, and how much it was mitigated. For tanks, that mitigation one is very helpful, because you can see how many hits had your active mitigation up, and you blocked or dodged or whatever, so that's all there. And then the next most important one is probably the healing. Who did the most healing? And how much of their healing was what? So we got Rila here, who cheesed everything with Spirit Link. That's okay. Did a lot of healing. Healing Tide was also there. You can see the breakdown. It's very nice to see your ratio of casts and abilities and spells and all that. Gives you an idea of things you should be doing more or things you should be doing less. If you have a filler that's up at the top and that's your number one hitting thing, you may want to look at how your class specifically works and see if that's how you want to be doing it. Maybe, maybe not. It depends on your class. Other more important things as far as mechanics go are definitely going to be the buffs and debuffs and interrupts and dispels, which don't exist on Mother, but they do exist on other fights. What's a good interrupt fight?
Definitely Zool, yeah.
All right.
We didn't kill Zool though.
That doesn't matter.
Last one is a really good one.
Yep.
The last pull was the best.
So last pull for interrupts, you can see over here on this table. We got Zimmy, Felony, Snow, Drogo, and whatnot. How many they interrupted. And all of these, which casts at what time got interrupted and who they were fighting. Or these are the ones that went off, I'm sorry. And who they were targeting. So you can see we got a roughly 50% interrupt ratio, which isn't the greatest. But, again, fun run. But you can see who's interrupting, how often, thanks to this lovely timeline up top. It's very handy. Buffs and debuffs are probably one of the most important tabs as far as rating goes. You can see how many, or how the duration of your buffs, how often did you have them. There's things for procs and whatnot as well are in there. We can go, let's go to me and see. So I have archive, a couple other things. We got a hero, how often this all happened. Don't judge me, I'm just trying to get rid of those prolonged power pots. Defensive. Notice I did not use my defensive, but I also was second to last to die, so there's that. But you can see uptime, how often they were used, when they were used, which is also very important, and all those wonderful things. This is very helpful stuff for trying to break down a fight. Where do I need to use my cooldowns? What specifically cooldowns do I need to use? What damage am I taking at this point in time as well is also very helpful. This is kind of the cursory buffs, debuffs, and all this fun stuff of what to do. There is also this problems tab, which is good for healthstones and potions and slow deaths, etc. So you can see how many people used a potion, how many people used a healthstone, which way too low, how many slow deaths happened. These are deaths that took more than 10 seconds due to lack of healing. So people who just died to damage typically are going to show up on here. This problems tab gets updated and changed depending on the boss, so I bet you Talic has a more in-depth one, yeah. So you can see avoidable damage, who stood in the bad, that could be completely avoided. It's all right here. Who took a cudgel that shouldn't have. Who got hit by a beam, etc. Fun stuff, good data analysis, trying to understand who's taking damage, especially on progression, who's taking unnecessary damage that shouldn't, and who's taking damage that is unavoidable, that needs to be healed through or accommodated, whether that's from a buff, debuff, or just abilities that should be dodged and or need to be soaked, etc. Those fun things. This is very analytical, data processing type of thing. So there's a heck of a lot to it. Warcraft Logs is a great tool to answer questions like, how much damage did my X ability do? How much damage did my Fell Hunters do on Vectis? Or Dreadstalkers, I should say. Sorry. And we can go to damage done. For me, Dreadstalkers did 413.8k. 11 casts. So that's not terrible. I would like it to be higher. But you can start asking those questions of how much damage did I do with this compared to this. So my filler, notice my filler is all the way down here at 7.33% of my damage, but I cast it 63 times. Is everybody following? Has everybody gone to sleep yet? I've been talking for a bit.
Wait, what? Where are we? Where am I?
Thank you, Shuby. This is a great tool, but you have to start asking questions in Warcraft Logs terminology. How much damage is this ability doing? during the fight. So we can look at, here's a good one. Omega Vector was the hardest hitting ability for me. I got hit 21 times. A lot. I took Vector quite a bit on that fight. But overall, you can see who took the most damage. The tanks, obviously. And then everybody else going down. More importantly, we can change it from who took the most damage to what did the most damage. By source, which is just going to always say Vectis or environment or whatever the boss name is, or environment, or ads, if there's ads on the fight. But I really want by ability. So Omega Vector did the most damage to the raid. Shocker to no one there. Followed by Contagion. So you can see the scary part of that fight is definitely going to be Omega Vector and Contagion for sure, which makes sense. Y'all are being very quiet.
It's pretty straightforward.
They're soaking in the knowledge.
Good. Be sponges. Does anybody have any questions? Even a specific question of how would I check something, something, something?
Should I ask you what I'm always asking?
What? Go ahead.
What do I always ask you to find for me?
Well, say it for the class here.
Okay, so can you show me low health target healing? You knew what I was gonna say.
This one is a little bit complicated to do. Let me grab something right quick.
So, like, the best part about this, the Warcraft Logs, is you can actually find your weaknesses, which is why I'm, like, been asking about this, because it's a specific thing that I know that I need to work on as a healer. So that's why I love it, because then I can check and see where I am, and then, yeah.
So, one of the more advanced features of Warcraft Logs is over here on this last tab called Queries. This allows you to do a heck of a lot of stuff with the logs. Basically, make those more complicated questions that are too difficult to do with the in-game or with the on-site UI. Look at healing done only while a buff is present, or look at damage done only during a certain phase or while I have a certain buff. Look at how many times, or look at cast done, etc., etc. Another one of those ways is to make this horrible looking expression, and I apologize in advance. It's very much SQL based, SQL server type of terminology, but I've made a few of those, and I have them saved. But this is one that just basically says, while their hit points minus your heal is less than I think 30,000. What would be a good number here? I think 30,000 is probably a good number. So now we can go to healing. With this expression, we can see who did the most healing while they were at low health, which is interesting. What fight is this? Vectis?
Yeah, it's Vectis.
I'm not sure that pin is working correctly now. Because healing... Because I really doubt that I did the most healing to myself while I was at low health.
Any chance we can get a list of those queries that you have saved?
For sure. I only have a couple saved. I tend to make them ad hoc with the new query thing. I can usually get it to do what I need it to do. The expression part is very finicky and a bit difficult, but I can definitely get at least a list of the ones that I have. I just wish that one that just doesn't seem to be that doesn't pass the smell test for me. Sale, can I get a confirmation that of that looking correct? Because I don't know if I think that's correct. That's one I have linked in our Discord. But basically, this is filtering any healing that is done to the target when their health is above 30,000, and it's just filtering that out.
Is that looking at the target or the healer? Looks like it's looking at the target.
It should be looking at the target. The target's hit points. Yeah, that's healing received. I don't know. That feels wrong, but that's how expressions more or less work. It's kind of a coded question that you can pose to the server that actually does the math and everything for Warcraft Logs. There's a whole page just of what variables you have access to and how to use them appropriately, but that is very advanced and probably outside of the scope for this very first Warcraft Logs.
Sorry.
You're fine. That pin should work, and I just
Okay,
seems
so
wrong.
how about pull up healing for people who have Omega Vector?
That we can do.
That I know because I know we've done it.
So healing buffs only match. We're gonna only match if it's present on the target, and the ability is Omega Vector. And we're gonna filter. So now we can see here. This is the healing done to people who have Omega Vector. While they have Omega Vector, that is. And those numbers change quite a bit. And even furthermore, you can again drill down to see what was the what was your healing breakdown to people who had Omega Vector. And was it effective or anything like that. These queries continue across all of the pages at any point in time. So that they don't care what exactly you're looking at. They will always apply. Is everybody still with me?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Is it Tuesday yet?
Almost.
So could you isolate something like damage done by criticals only, for example, and show a table of all members in the party and just the damage they did with criticals, for example?
Probably. Let's see. Damage done to enemies. Crit. Only crits. And we're going to filter. So if I pick this one, yeah. So you can see here, crit percentage, all this is 100% crit now. So this was all of the damage only done, or healing, it looks like. No, this is just damage. All the damage only done by critical strikes. How much is my crit? It should be relatively mediocre. Yeah. Looks about the same. In a perfect world, the total damage done by your raid would equal the average percentage of the crit strike chance of your raid. 'Cause math. With Desire Lore coming out on Tuesday, because it is, the other part of Warcraft Logs, which most people in the community are aware of and probably put entirely too much faith in, is rankings. You can see rankings here for Mythic, All-Star, DPS, tanks, and healers. The All-Star is character specific, and it only gets calculated once a day. So for whatever that's worth. But you can also look at more important things like, am I the best Death Knight there is? Let's go with, am I the best Frost Death Knight?
right?
And the answer to that one is anonymous is the best. Thanks. No, we need a more practical example. See, that's incorrect. That should say all that jazz, but whatever. So you can see All-Star, this is over the whole instance in Uldir, who has the most All-Star points. And this is calculated based on damage and a whole bunch of fancy math in the back. But it specifically on damage and damage alone. Damage done to the boss. And certain bosses are specifically excluded from these All-Star rankings, by the way. But it's noted on each of the bosses' individual fight page, which ones are. And there's usually good reason, like when people could cheese a lot of things, like starting in the third room with Mother. Yeah, that was
Luke.
thing. Yeah. No, it's starting in the third room is a thing. But keep in mind that often with these rankings, people, at least at this point in the tier, not necessarily true for the weeks 1, 2, and 3 now, and then possibly 4. These are done by people intentionally trying to get these ranks. So they will do things like definitely not be assigned any of the mechanics that reduce their damage, and do certain things that will up their damage if possible. So just be aware of that when trying to rank yourself here. I'm not saying don't do it. I'm saying get your team lead's approval first.
So, Jazzy, am I correct in saying that, like for tanks, for instance, that there are some tanks with high parses, but that doesn't mean that they're not actually horrible tanks that are dying constantly and are putting their teams in jeopardy? Like, I've seen parse hound tanks that clearly aren't useful.
Tanks are especially a tricky one because the fundamental, and this is tank theory, the rule of a tank is you shouldn't die. A lot of that is within our control, some of that is not. But parses only deal with damage done to the boss and their ads. So if you're number 1 tank on Warcraft Logs, that means next to nothing really in practice for your survivability and what that means for your team. The other 2 roles, damage and healing, is quantifiable and is a little bit more straightforward, even though the healing one is a little tricky because that requires people to take damage. And you'll see teams that under heal fights just so that their healers can get a parse, but it's still damage that needs to be healed so the raid can survive, and you get that coveted boss kill. This is going dramatically faster than I was expecting it to. Does anybody have questions about rankings and or parses? And yes, there is a difference.
How about you explain the difference between rankings and parses?
I'm glad you asked, Leia. Rankings are overall of all time. Any log that was uploaded with Uldir, the rankings will always be calculated from all of the logs that include Uldir, all of them. Parses, however, are from the previous, I want to say, 2 weeks. So it's a bit of a rolling ranking versus a static forever and always ranking. So there's that. Parses is different from rankings.
And how about, sorry.
I was going to say most of the time, and I'm actually going to go back to one of our logs here. Saturday morning fun run for some reason. Okay. Oh, that was last week's. Okay. We can go here to rankings just to see how you did on the fight. This is where this log's participants fall. And you can see it's already defaulted to rankings here. How you compare against all other players and all of their logs and all of their attempts. So you can see here, absolute percentage is on the left and eye level percentage is on the right. And guild ranking as well, execution and speed. This is for damage. Here's one for healing. There's one for boss damage and weighted damage, and those are fight dependent. If there's adds that with the fight, like with Zool, and you go to boss damage, you can see who's doing the most damage to Zool directly and not to the ads. So, and what were you going to say, Leia?
I was going to say, how about you talk about the difference between eye level and all the overall ranking?
The eye level is within there's certain brackets that Kira has set up, but it's usually about 3 to 4 eye level spread, and that eye level percentage is how well you do compared to everybody else that is at your eye level. All the logs containing data from these classes at that eye level. So eye level is a very good indicator of how well you are playing with your current gear and your current setup, barring talents and other things. Eye level is just a number, whereas your secondaries and all that play in as well. So it's an inexact thing, but it's eye level percentage is a lot of times more meaningful than overall if you're gearing up an alt or if you're just starting out, just so you can see, am I doing well for what I got? Versus the overall percentages, am I doing well?
Those are only going to show up when you kill a boss. Are you going to show people how to check how they're doing for boss damage when the boss hasn't been killed?
Sure, yeah. So rankings and parses only happen on the kill. They do not happen on your wipes. So let's.
Well, it shows what you would be at, but it doesn't count.
Performance. Hang on, let me pull that up here. Performance metrics, which are over here, are calculated differently than your rankings.
Yeah.
This is not the same as your rankings. So if we look here, for example, felony on this Vectus kill had a performance metric of 95%, by eye level, and I have a sneaking suspicion, yeah, 93% by eye level for the actual ranking. So that it's calculated different. It's an approximation of how well you're doing. But let's look at let's find a wipe here.
Zool or our mother.
What did we wipe on this one?
We wiped on Zool and mother, remember?
No, this is last week's version.
Add damage
Oh,
on Vectus works
Sick
too.
boss, it says. Little drop down. Anything that says show all.
Yeah. Here we go. Let's look at damage.
There's not enough. Yeah, that Cahoon, there's not enough there.
Yeah. Damage done. Let's change the target to not be Zekvaz. Let's, what are they called? They're called Void Weavers. That's abilities. Am I getting... No?
It's such a small log, they may not have shown up yet.
Yeah,
Oh,
they probably didn't show up.
You are correct. Let's look at Vectus because I know we got him here. So, we can look at damage done, and you see Vectus here, and then for some reason a little critter weevil. But then we have this Plague Amalgam, which is an ad that actually does matter for Vectus quite a bit. So now we can look at damage only done to the Plague Amalgam over the kill here. You can see these spikes. That's where they spawned and then where they died. You can see I'm not going to... Laney's doing second best to add damage. And you can see... And again, you can break it down even further of what abilities are doing that damage and etc., etc. All this stuff is there. How much damage am I doing to Plague Amalgams with my Moonfire? And then it even breaks it down to, well, in the first one, you're doing the most. And then it kind of tapers down from there. And then we could even go as far as to say, well, how am I doing on crits? With that lovely query. Just to pile everything on. So, on Vectus, Odwame, I have no idea if that's actually correct. Moonfire crits to Plague Amalgam only. And that's what this is. What this is showing. Which again, the first one looks to be the most, followed by a second. But then the 9th Plague Amalgam to show. So when it comes to add specific damage, which is important depending on the fight, that's the way of doing it. The target filter, which is up here to the left. What else you got for me? I will show you how to do it. I promise.
I got nothing.
Well, that's not true. I have logs with you.
Oh, that's true.
One thing I did not go over, and what we can look at specifically on Vectus, is let's look at stacks of lingering infection, because that matters. So you can see here, because this ability does not ever go away, and you want to keep it as low as possible, you can see whose stacks, and I'm not gonna. We can see whose stacks got a little high there, 21. Whew. But you can see stacks of debuffs by just selecting the debuff that you're looking for, or buff that you're looking for. And this will show the stacking of it. And if you just want to look at one person specifically at semi-random, you can see when they got the additional ones and how much they went up to. This works for buffs, debuffs, or anything that's helpful. Anybody else? You know you wanna.
Nobody has any questions?
I find it difficult that I've covered everything with Warcraft Logs and
if you're
52
uncomfortable,
minutes.
type. You can always type it.
Do you want to go into replays?
Ooh, thank you, Luke.
Yeah, replay is the best function of this.
I love replay.
Replays are amazing. Thanks to how much information is stored with those logs, we can do something very fun, which is the replays right here, which is the top right. What you can do here is very quickly see where everybody is standing when they get debuffs like Omega Vector, where they go, and often how far they're going to spread. If that is a mechanic that happens, I'm looking at you, Fetid, on Mythic. And where everybody is standing and where they go. This is real time. You can slow it down to half time or speed it up to double time. You can follow and track everything as well.
You can't see Z-axis to see me jumping around in a panic?
No, there is no Z-axis for it, unfortunately. 3D replays are coming, but it's called Record Your Own Play.
We can watch what you're casting while you're panicking.
Yes, we can.
Should show everybody that you can add and remove people from the view. And
Oh yes, similar to charts, the way they work on the main pages, you can simply click and they will hide the people from the view, including but not limited to the boss, which I don't know why you'd ever want that.
Is there a hide all view all button?
There's not, but you can just go and click all the names, and they get unhighlighted when they're hidden versus when they're shown. There's not a all or none.
I didn't know about that little feature. Cool.
So you can see the
Thought I joined
panic
the party?
boxes. Welcome.
If you hover on the icon for a player, does it give you any tooltip highlight or anything like that information?
It gives you their X and Y coordinates. I don't know why I'm using my push to talk since I turned that off. It gives you, if you hover over, it gives you their X and Y coordinates. If you actually select them, they will show up as frames of what they cast, what buffs they have, what their next 2 casts are, I believe, and then who they're targeting as well, and their debuffs and whatnot. Very helpful and the pertinent information that a astute player would have at that instant. So, replays are very helpful if you're looking at position-dependent fights, like Vectis, for example, or even Gahoon to see who's running balls or running the orbs and where they're getting tricky, how long it takes them, and what abilities they're using. You can even see the little cysts. Occasionally it's a little buggy, you have to do damage to them to make them show up, but once you do, they show up.
another thing that I will typically use logs for, especially when I'm starting to try to learn a fight, is go in and look at the classes that are my class, for instance, like Resto Shaman, and what other Resto Shamans are running for that fight. I don't think you've shown that yet, have you?
I have not. I'll show you where to pull that up. this late in the tier, again, like with rankings and parses, these, let's look here. That would be under statistics, by the way. This late in the tier, it's good to be a little leery of the talent choices that are being made, because this is going off of those rankings and parses. What talent combinations are going to give the most damage or healing? If that's good for your class and spec, that's fine, that's great. But let's use... So there was a drop down there. You could see it has all the classes. You can pick the class and then pick the spec, and then it'll also have Azurite powers, talents, and trinkets, and you can compare all of those to how they do. So you can see, oh, and then there it goes away. Let's use talents. So these are all the rest of Shaman talents and how they rank as far as HPS goes for the Shamans, which is a valuable thing to know. But APT apparently gives the most HPS on Mythic. Oh, this is all the bosses in Mythic.
I guess the one that I was specifically talking about was each specific boss as I'm earlier in the tier, just like you said.
Yeah, so we can look at Talic, for example. Talent breakdown for all the rest of Shamans is, again, the same thing. All these drop downs up top here, you can look at speed, execution, HPS, DPS. This is DPS, actually. Let's go to HPS. And I really wish it would stop changing that. Oh, there we go. Player healing. We'll look at the only what the top tier are running. There you go. The statistics parts are great for finding what talents are best, specifically for damage. But word of caution is often there is cheesing happening. So please be leery of them. Not to say you can't, but just watch for that. Anybody else got questions or how to or what do I do? When do I do?
Are there any tanks in the channel?
Absolutely.
Jazzy's a tank.
I am a tank. What's up?
Well, I mean, besides you, because I assume you know how to do the overlays, checking your defensives against incoming damage.
Oh,
I didn't
I
know
can
if
show
maybe
that.
anybody else in the channel might want to know how to do that.
Well, that's still applicable. Yeah, let's look at that.
Because that was super helpful for me when I first began tanking.
Yeah. So let's actually look at. Let's not look at that.
What were you gonna look at, Cahoon?
Yes.
Yeah, let's not talk about it.
I don't want to look at Cahoon. Let's look at Mithrax. Why not? Let's look at our Mithrax kill. And specifically, I want to look at my, which I am all that jazz, my damage taken while I have a buff, or my active mitigation, which I should have 100% of the time I am taking damage, for sure. These pluses over here on the right, this is for the buffs and debuffs, will add a second graph over the top of any default graph that is shown. So like here, my active mitigation is Iron Skin Brew, so I'm just going to hit that plus right here, and you can see it shows up right here. So now I'm going to come back here and look at my damage taken. So you can see the times I'm taking damage, I have Iron Skin up the majority of the time. If you want to overlay that on the main graph, you can just change this where it says graph separate. We're going to change that to graph main. So now you can see highlighted where I took damage while I had the buff versus when I did not. So you can see all that there. A more advanced way of doing this, and probably more important for tanks, we can use query. And we're going to say when the buff is absent from me. We're going to say Iron Skin Brew. Because this is a piece of important damage. How much damage did I take without Iron Skin Brew? And this is the one that I should be ashamed of. I took 12 hits without Iron Skin. That's not okay. So that's a good way of checking buff uptime and capitalizing your damaging abilities or your damage mitigating abilities properly by using this lovely little plus to add the additional graph so you can have an overlay. One other thing that I haven't mentioned, we've kind of glossed over these graphs up here, but if you can see, there's actually a little tooltip that follows along, and that's a time marker. But what's handy you can do is, let's say you really want to know from about 2 minutes on to 4 minutes for some random reason. You can click and drag, and you can see it highlights that area approximately. When you let go, it zooms in just on that area, effectively filtering out before and after this time frame. So you can really get into, okay, during this part, these few seconds, what's happening to me or to anybody else. Fun stuff? Question mark? I mean,
you show maybe how to zoom back out once you've.
There's this lovely reset zoom up at the top. You can zoom out. Right next to that as well is phases. By default, if a fight has phases, Kira puts in this lovely thing so you can only look at the stage 2 stuff for Mithrax when he's casting out the beam and you got to deal with the ads. So you can see just these are the events that happen during those phases as well. But the reset zoom is the button you're looking for right under phases. Y'all are Warcraft Logs masters now, I swear, right? Nothing.
I don't know if you're planning on doing this at all, but another one that I have trouble getting too in depth with is Sim.
Sims may or may not be a whole nother can of worms that I may end up going into. That will definitely be a future episode, if at all.
No, I appreciate it. It's a lot of information. Thank
you. Yeah.
Yeah, you pretty much answered all the questions that I didn't know, so it's good.
Well, that's good. If you think of any at any time, feel free to hit me up on Discord. I will definitely help you out.
Will do. Appreciate it.
Yeah. if anybody has any more questions, feel free to hit me up at all. But thank you all for coming. And
thanks for doing this, Jazzy.
You are quite welcome anytime. I think Leia had alluded to previously. I do. My plan is to have these on a semi-regular basis, going over other useful tools to improve your play, whether that's Warcraft Logs or Sims that were previously mentioned, or weak auras, which are amazing in every way possible, or any other add-ons for that matter. I can usually fumble my way through something and help y'all out. So anything to improve everybody's play, and it's a learning experience for everybody.
I think anything that can help our guild is important.
So again, thanks y'all for coming.
Thanks,
You,
this was fun.
Thanks so much for doing this, Jazzy.
You are
This
very
was
welcome.
great.
Are you ever going to just to make it so people can see how this all works together, like pick a fight, and I mean, maybe somebody will volunteer to be the guinea pig and just kind of go through how that particular person's logs can really be taken apart so people can see how that all works together, because I know that is sometimes beneficial. You see the whole big picture and you're like, wow, there's a lot of stuff. I have no idea how it relates to me. So
yeah, we can
like just a fight.
Yeah, we
just
could do something along those lines.
Suggestion for next time, maybe.
With Uldir coming up, that's going to give us a lot of good fodder for how to learn how to be better at a fight. Not Uldir, Dazarlor.
Yeah. No more Uldir. We're done.
Thank God. With Dazarlor, we can dive into logs on progression fights and learning, and on the hundreds of wipes that will inevitably ensue, to try to figure out how to do this thing better, whatever that is. Do more damage, do more healing. And it'd be great if we could get a guinea pig log.
Me.
So that we could pick it
Go
apart.
ahead and use mine.
Destroy it. Make the person feel horrible.
I volunteer as tribute.
We're gonna find out everything that you step in, Leia.
First of all, I step in stuff a lot less than other people. I'm usually yelling at people for stepping in things. Now, there's other things that I do wrong, and I'm very aware of that. I can hear Sale rolling his eyes right now.
But yes.
Awesome. Thanks for coming, guys.
Plan on future boot camps or the like, and we'll post in the events channel what we come up with. But thanks for coming.
Awesome.
Thanks for listening to me talk for a little over an hour.
And this is going to go up on YouTube, so any of your team members that didn't make it, they'll be able to view it. And if they have questions, obviously, Jazzy.
And if they say, well, why didn't you ask this question? Then say, why weren't you there?
Exactly.
Pointed straight back at them.
I have a couple of people who will be happy to hear it's going to be on YouTube, so thank you.
Yes, it will. All right.
Yes, once again, thank you. I'm going to get ready to raid, but you guys have a great night and take care. Thank you very much.
Have fun, Primordial.
Have a good raid and log.
Have a good raid.
All right, I'm going to